You who are familiar with our United Methodist way of doing things know that the pastors are appointed or assigned to local churches, and we don't necessarily get to pick where we go. I got the incredible blessing of coming here and am still so very grateful for that. But that does mean that those of us clergy, when we see our phone ring and it's the district superintendent, we do have a little teeny heart attack each time. Just a little, and we just hold our breath. And about, year and a half ago or so, my phone rang and I looked at the number and it was Danny. And I was like, no, that can't be. It's not that time of year. And I answered my phone. He just wanted a church location and building, so it's all okay. And then our districts got combined and I lost my job, so that's terrific. I am fine with that. I was very glad in that instance that sometimes things aren't always what they seem. That's kind of a theme around here. We've been studying the Holy Week and the gospel passages according to Mark. And that's something that we should always look for in Mark. Things aren't always what they seem. So I want you to hear these words this morning from Mark chapter 16. This is his account of the resurrection. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they could go and anoint Jesus' dead body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they came to the tomb. They were saying to each other, "Who's going to roll the stone away from the entrance for us?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away, and it was a very large stone. Going into the tomb, they saw a young man in a white robe seated on the right side, and they were startled. But he said to them, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He isn't here. Look, here's the place where they laid him. Go tell his disciples, especially Peter, that he is going ahead of you into Galilee. You will see him there just as he told you." Overcome with terror and dread, they fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Let us hear what the Spirit is speaking to God's people. Now, the typical interpretation of this passage is that these women failed. They failed to do what they were supposed to do. They were instructed to go and share the news of the resurrection, and they just ran away afraid. But as I said, around here, things aren't always as they seem. Fear and failure may indeed be prominent factors in Mark, but could it not be that silence is the most appropriate response to a holy encounter with divine mystery? Let's think about that for a moment. When we encounter something that defies explanation, something that we are not expecting, something that we struggle to make sense of, something that moves us, something that is holy, something in which clearly God has done something. Maybe the appropriate response is silence. Sung-Hee Kim, a commentator, wrote that those who have understood the divine being keep silent because they acknowledge that silence alone can describe and express the divinity. That made me think of another of my favorite quotes of Father Thomas Keating, and it says that silence, that was very dramatic. I trust you are all awake now. Okay, I'm going to try not, well, now you can't hear me at all. Okay, am I back? All right. I will try not to move. Maybe that's the key. Father Thomas Keating said that silence is God's first language. See, this commentator looking at this passage, this silence at the tomb of Jesus, she saw back into the beginning the silence before the creation began. That before God spoke the world into being, there was silence. God's first language. So I just wondered, this traditional reading that the women failed, maybe the women weren't silent because they were stupid and afraid, but because they understood the assignment. They knew what they had seen. They knew the holy. And because there's no one right way to read this, let's just say then that Mark does let us believe that the women at the tomb failed to do what they were instructed to do, to demonstrate that failure is part of following. Because that's the truth. When we become disciples of Jesus, we don't instantly become cured of our human failings, of our tendency to put ourselves first, to do what we want to do, to not think of others. We will still make mistakes. And failure is not the end of the story. failure is part of how we learn and grow as human beings. Failure is part of following. So there's a debate about the ending of Mark. If you've been following along in your own Bible, or if you pick up a Pew Bible, you may see that I stopped with verse 8, but there are a few more paragraphs. Well, here's the thing. There's actually two alternate endings of the Gospel according to Mark, sometimes referred to as the shorter or intermediate ending and the longer ending. But pretty much all critical biblical scholars agree that these were added on, not by Mark, but a century later. They were added on by others. I'm thinking it's because we are kind of uncomfortable with endings that don't tie up nice and neat. We don't like uncertainty. As human beings, was listening to a podcast the other day about change. It's called A Slight Change of Plans. And the host was sharing that a research study indicated that human beings showed more stress when they were told that there was a 50% chance that they would be receiving an electric shock than when they were told there was a 100% chance that they'd receive an electric shock. We would rather know something bad is going to happen than not know it may or may not. It's a 50-50 chance. Anybody feeling that? Anybody know what that's about? We don't like uncertainty. It's uncomfortable. And I'm just sure that that's why there were other authors who had to come along and help Mark finish his gospel. Because we just can't leave it with, and they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Like, that just can't be how it ends. But I think it most likely ends this way intentionally as a rhetorical strategy. Because when Mark ends this abruptly, the audience who hears it has to do something. They, being uncomfortable with uncertainty, as all humans are, feel like, okay, it's a call to action. We have to do something now. We have to share the rest of the story. So I think Mark knew exactly what he was doing. And because obviously, if we just look at the data, the very existence of Mark's gospel, a document that was written, the original one, was written over 40 years after the crucifixion and resurrection took place. Well, it's evidence that the women said something to someone. How would we get it? Thank God, things aren't always as they seem. Mark invites us to finish the story. Mark actually couldn't finish the story because the story isn't over. The good news of Jesus, the Christ, the Son of God, is still being told. And it's up to us to tell the rest of the story. Thank God that things aren't always as they seem. Thank you so much for choosing to be here in worship with us on this Easter Sunday morning. We're so glad to have you, and I pray that you have experienced an encounter with the Holy, that you have come to know something of God's presence here in this place or wherever you are worshiping. And if you have felt a nudge, if you want to take the next step in your journey of faith, whether that's to accept Christ for the first time or to reaffirm your faith if it has been a while and there have been some off-ramps and obstacles, or if you would like to join with this community of faith and find your way forward with us together. We are not perfect. We don't have all the answers, but we are committed to figuring it out together. If you would like to ask for help in discerning what that next step might be, I would love to visit with you. My contact information is actually right under the prayer concerns page, so you can call or text or email me and set up a time that we could visit. Or if you would like to share a decision that you've made this morning, then I would invite you to come and share that with me as we all stand and sing together one more time. And for being with us this morning. I hope that you were blessed, and I hope that you have a blessed rest of your Easter. I hope that when you go, you remember that the story is not over. It's yours to tell. Share the good news. Go in peace.